Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 182 in the book of Genesis. We're going to read in Genesis chapter 48, and Joseph is stuck in Egypt. I think he's still a slave, so his family stays there with him and prospers with him there while he's in Egypt. His family's actually there for hundreds of years eventually, until in the book of Exodus, which we're not in today, a new king comes over Egypt, a new Pharaoh who did not know Joseph. That's the point. And said to his people, the people of Israel are too many, too mighty for us, and let's deal shrewdly with them, let's be ruthless with them, let's be hard service towards them, and let's put them into slavery. So you go from one slave, Joseph, to all of Israel being slave, which is millions of Jews by that point, after Joseph is long forgotten. So all the future Pharaoh knows there is there's a lot of Jews, and he's threatened with them, and they're very prosperous up in Goshen, so he views them as a threat, not an asset. So of those bad circumstances, remember, the Lord's going to use the suffering of Israel, something they don't prefer, to proclaim his ways, proclaim his glory. Now, they didn't like it, but the Lord uses something that they don't prefer to increase their access and influence. Okay, so let's go back to Joseph now. So this is 200 years before the slavery thing that I was telling you about. It's time for Jacob to die, and he's been in Egypt for 17 years. Jacob has. He's 147 years old. Joseph's about 54 by my calculations. Chapter 48. After this, Joseph was told, "Behold, your father is ill." So he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and it was told to Jacob, "Your son Joseph has come to you." Then Israel, also known as Jacob, summoned his strength and sat up in bed. That's how sick he is. He has to summon his strength to sit up in bed. So he's sick, old, weak, tired, and we'll find out here in a second, blind. And Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty," for you Amy Grant fans, that's El Shaddai. El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me and said to me, "Behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make you of a company of peoples, and I will give this land to your offspring after you for an everlasting possession. And now your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are mine." So Jacob's father says to Joseph's father says to Joseph that his children are going to be adopted by Jacob. "And now your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are mine." So they're adopted, and what that means is they get an inheritance. "Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine." And then he compares them as Reuben and Simeon are. So he compares them to his real sons. And then verse 6, "And the children that you fathered after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance." We don't actually know if Joseph has any more brothers, or any more sons, excuse me. "As for me, when I came from Paddan to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan on the way. When there was still some distance to go to Ephrath, I buried her there on the way to Ephrath," that is Bethlehem. So Joseph's mother, who is Rachel, is buried in Bethlehem. She died on the way down. "When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, 'Who are these?' Joseph said to his father, 'They are my sons, whom God has given me here.' And he said, 'Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them.' Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see." This is the time before cataract surgery. "So Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and he embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, 'I never expected to see your face,'" because he thought he was dead for 20 years. "And behold, God has let me see your offspring too.' Then Joseph removed them from his knees. He bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both." Now you got to get the picture here. Ephraim on his right, towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh on his left, towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. And Israel stretched out his hand, and so if we're looking from the bottom of the bed, the guy that's going to be on the guy who's in bed, his right hand is the firstborn. And what he does, then Israel stretches out his right hand and lays it on the head of Ephraim. So he does the crossing of hands to bless his children. So he's lying in bed and he crosses his hand and kind of upends what Joseph was setting up to have the oldest, Manasseh, on his right hand and the second-born, Ephraim, on his left hand. So Joseph positions his sons for blessing the firstborn. And oh my goodness, this has happened again. So the good news in the story is Manasseh, the oldest, and Ephraim, the second oldest, are going to be elevated in inheritance and blessing and stature, which is great. They're going to be adopted by Jacob, which is great. They're going to go right into this direct inheritance line, which means they get land. And they become entitled to a portion of it. The bad news is Manasseh, the oldest, is going to get blessed second, and the younger, Ephraim, gets blessed first. Well, this is a little bit the topsy-turvy thing. It kind of recalls Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac. It recalls Jacob, who at the time of birth usurps his brother Esau, and he gets the birthright, and he sells his birthright for a pot of stew. And you get this topsy-turvy blessing through this whole family, through generation after generation. The younger keeps being greater in God's economy. That might point to God's sovereignty, God's election, God's choice, and perhaps points to the younger sons being greater, and you end up with Jesus. All right, so you have to admire God's work over the century as he sets things up here. Let's open our eyes that our decisions and our behaviors can have ripple effects throughout the generation for centuries. So let's make good decisions now. I think that's a teaching point. Be careful about what characterizes your life now as it carries on for a long period of time. I think a good take-home point is let's bless our next generation. And probably, just a final question is, do your kids know, or do your grandkids know? Does the next generation know that you bless them? If not, let's go work on that today. Thanks for listening.